The courtroom doors closed behind me with a heavy thud that resounded through the marbled hall. I clutched the folder containing 3 years of meticulous documentation, text messages, emails, bank statements, and photographs, evidence of a life abandoned. My attorney gave me a reassuring nod as I settled into the hard wooden bench, smoothing the wrinkles from my charcoal gray skirt. "All rise for the Honorable Judge Catherine Sloan." The routine words sent a tremor through me. After months of preparation, the moment had arrived. I rose on unsteady legs, fixing my gaze on the imposing bench where the woman who would determine our future would preside. My name is Naomi Westbrook, and I never imagined my life would come to this, fighting my ex-husband for the right to protect my son from the same man who walked out on us claiming he needed space and was tired of family life. 2 rows ahead, Devin sat beside his attorney, his posture rigid in an expensive suit I'd never seen before. He didn't turn around, but I could feel his presence like a weight pressing against my chest. 3 years ago, he had packed a single suitcase while I was at work and Owen was at daycare. His parting gift, a note on the kitchen counter explaining how fatherhood had become a burden he never truly wanted. The court is now in session in the matter of Westbrook versus Harrington regarding visitation rights, Judge Sloan announced, her voice cutting through my memories. As our attorneys approached the bench for preliminary matters, I glanced at my phone to check the time. Lucia, my mother, had promised to send updates about Owen throughout the day. Right on cue, a message appeared with a photo of my 4-year-old boy building a tower of blocks, his dark curls falling across his forehead just like his father's. The sight of him made my throat tighten. Everything I was doing, facing the man who had shattered our world, submitting myself to the clinical dissection of our failed marriage in this cold courtroom, was for Owen. To protect him from experiencing the same abandonment twice. "Mrs. Westbrook?" I jerked my head up, finding Judge Sloan's expectant gaze fixed on me. "Yes, Your Honor?" "Your attorney has submitted quite extensive documentation regarding your ex-husband's absence from your son's life. Would you like to make an opening statement about your position regarding Mr. Harrington's petition for visitation rights?" I glanced at my lawyer, Melissa Abernathy, who gave a slight nod of encouragement. Taking a deep breath, I stood and faced the judge. "Your Honor, when my husband left 3 years ago, he made his intentions crystal clear. He didn't want the responsibilities of fatherhood. He didn't want the late nights, the tantrums, the doctor's appointments, or the daycare pickups. He wanted freedom, and he took it without looking back." I paused, conscious of Devin shifting in his seat. "For 3 years, my son has asked where his father is. For 3 years, I've had to see the confusion in his eyes when other children's daddies pick them up from preschool. For 3 years, I've been both mother and father, handling every fever, every nightmare, every milestone alone." My voice wavered, but I forced myself to continue. "And now, suddenly, Mr. Harrington has decided fatherhood might suit him after all. He wants to walk back into Owen's life as if the past 3 years never happened. But children aren't toys you can set aside and pick up again when it's convenient. They're human beings with feelings, with memories, with a need for consistency and security." Judge Sloan nodded, her expression unreadable. "Thank you, Mrs. Westbrook. Mr. Harrington, would you like to respond?" Finally, Devin turned, and our eyes met for the first time in 3 years. The familiar angles of his face, once beloved, now seemed to belong to a stranger. He rose slowly, straightening his tie with the nervous gesture I remembered from our wedding day. "Your Honor, I made a terrible mistake," he began, his voice softer than I remembered. 3 years ago, I was overwhelmed and lost. The pressures of fatherhood, of marriage, I wasn't prepared. I handled it all wrong, in the worst possible way. He looked directly at me then, his eyes pleading. But I've changed. I've been in therapy for over a year. I've built a stable life, a home with a room ready for my son. I'm not asking for custody. I'm asking for a chance to know my boy, to be a positive presence in his life. To make amends for my failures. The sincerity in his voice caught me off guard. For a moment, I could almost believe him, almost see the man I'd fallen in love with a decade ago. But then I remembered the silence of 3 years. The birthdays without even a card. The Christmas morning when Owen had tearfully asked if his daddy didn't love him enough to bring him a present. "Mr. Harrington," Judge Sloan said, "while I appreciate your stated intentions, we have documentation showing virtually no contact or support for 3 years. Can you explain that absence?" Devin nodded, his shoulders slumping slightly. "I can't justify it, Your Honor. I was running from my responsibilities. From my fears of inadequacy. I told myself Owen would be better off without a father who felt trapped by parenthood. It was selfish and cowardly." The admission hung in the air like a confession. "And what changed?" Judge Sloan pressed. A flicker of something, pain, perhaps, crossed Devin's face. "Last year, my father died," he said quietly. "We were estranged for most of my life. In his final days, we tried to reconnect, but there was too much lost time, too many missed moments. I realized I was creating the same pattern with my own son." His voice broke slightly. "I don't want Owen to one day stand at my deathbed as a stranger, wishing we'd had more time. I want to be his father, not perfect, but present. It's not too late. He's only 4. 4.5, I corrected automatically, the words escaping before I could stop them. Devin's eyes met mine again, and I saw a flash of genuine grief. 4.5, he repeated softly. "I've missed so much already." Judge Sloan cleared her throat. "This court will take a 15-minute recess. When we return, I'd like to hear from the child psychologist who's reviewed this case." As everyone stood, I felt lightheaded. Devin's words had landed like blows. Not because they were cruel, but because they carried an unsettling ring of truth. Had he really changed? Could people transform so fundamentally? And if he had, what right did I have to keep Owen from knowing his father? But another voice, harder and more certain, reminded me of the broken promises. The night I'd called Devin from the emergency room when Owen, just turned 2, had a febrile seizure, and how my call had gone straight to voicemail. The child support payments that arrived sporadically at first, then stopped altogether until my lawyer sent a formal demand letter. In the hallway outside the courtroom, Melissa pulled me aside. "You're doing great," she reassured me. "But be prepared, Dr. Linwood is likely to recommend some form of supervised visitation to start. She believes children benefit from relationships with both parents unless there's evidence of abuse." I nodded numbly. What if she's right? What if I'm being selfish, keeping them apart because I'm hurt and angry? Melissa's expression softened. "Naomi, you have every right to be cautious. He abandoned you both without warning. That's traumatic for a child, even if Owen was too young to fully understand it then. Your concerns aren't selfish, they're protective." I sank onto a nearby bench, suddenly exhausted. But what if Devin really has changed? What if denying them a relationship hurts Owen in the long run? "That's why we're suggesting a gradual approach," Melissa explained. "Supervised visits, limited hours, building slowly. If Devin is serious about being a father, he'll accept those terms." I nodded, trying to find clarity amidst the storm of emotions. An image of Owen's face flashed through my mind, his wide, curious eyes so like Devon's, always studying the world with wonder. Sometimes when he laughed, I could hear echoes of his father's deep chuckle, a sound once so precious to me. My phone vibrated with another message from my mother, Owen asking when Mommy coming home. Miss you. All okay here. I smiled despite myself, typing back, tell him Mommy will be home for dinner and bedtime stories. Love you both. When court resumed, Dr. Eleanor Linwood took the stand. A woman in her 50s with silver-streaked hair pulled into a neat bun, she exuded both compassion and authority as she was sworn in. Dr. Linwood, Judge Sloan began, you've reviewed the case file and interviewed both parents, correct? Yes, Your Honor. I've had 2 sessions with Mrs. Westbrook and 1 with Mr. Harrington. I've also reviewed Owen's preschool records and spoken with his teacher about his social and emotional development. And what is your professional assessment of this situation? Dr. Linwood adjusted her glasses. Owen Westbrook Harrington is, by all accounts, a well-adjusted child despite the circumstances. He's thriving in preschool, has age-appropriate social skills, and a secure attachment to his mother, who has provided a stable and nurturing environment. I felt a surge of pride at her words, validation of the countless sleepless nights, the juggling act of single parenthood while maintaining my career as a graphic designer. However, Dr. Linwood continued, Owen has begun asking more questions about his father as he interacts with other children from 2-parent homes. This is developmentally normal and indicates he's processing his family structure. She turned slightly to address both Devon and me. In cases like this, where there's no evidence of abuse but rather abandonment followed by a desire to reconnect, I generally recommend a gradual reintroduction. Children benefit from positive relationships with both parents, but trust must be rebuilt carefully. Judge Sloan nodded. What specifically would you recommend in this case? I would suggest beginning with short, supervised visits, perhaps 2 hours once a week in a neutral location like a family center. If those go well over a 3-month period, progressing to longer visits, perhaps in Mr. Harrington's home but still supervised. The goal would be to slowly build toward unsupervised visitation, but only if Mr. Harrington demonstrates consistent commitment and Owen shows comfort with the developing relationship. I watched Devon's face as she spoke. He was nodding, a look of earnest acceptance on his features. Was it genuine, or just a performance for the court? Your Honor, Devon's attorney interjected, while we appreciate Dr. Linwood's expertise, my client has already missed 3 years of his son's life. We're asking for more substantial visitation to begin rebuilding that relationship. Perhaps alternating weekends. Absolutely not, I blurted out, unable to contain myself. Owen doesn't even know who Devon is. He can't just start spending entire weekends with a stranger. Judge Sloan gave me a stern look. Mrs. Westbrook, please allow your attorney to speak for you. My apologies, Your Honor, I murmured, feeling heat rise to my face. Melissa stood smoothly. Your Honor, my client's concern is valid. Owen has no memory of Mr. Harrington. To suddenly place him in overnight situations would be potentially traumatic. We believe Dr. Linwood's recommendation of a gradual approach centered on Owen's comfort and adjustment is the most appropriate path forward. The rest of the hearing passed in a blur of technical arguments about schedules, supervision requirements, and evaluation metrics. Throughout it all, I kept returning to the same question: was I fighting Devon because I genuinely believed it was best for Owen, or because I couldn't forgive the man who had walked out on us? Finally, Judge Sloan cleared her throat. Having considered the evidence and testimony presented today, I'm issuing a preliminary ruling. Mr. Harrington will be granted supervised visitation with Owen, beginning with 2-hour sessions once a week for the first month, increasing to 3 hours twice a week for the second month, provided the initial visits go well. She fixed Devon with a firm stare. Mr. Harrington, these visits will be at your expense and supervised by a court-approved professional. Any missed visits without compelling reasons will be documented and may affect future visitation rights. After 3 months, we will reassess based on Owen's adjustment and your consistency. Turning to me, her expression softened slightly. Mrs. Westbrook, I understand your hesitation. You've been the sole parent for 3 years, providing stability and love under difficult circumstances. But unless evidence emerges that these visits are detrimental to Owen, the court believes he has the right to know his father. The finality of her words settled over me. It was happening. After 3 years of being our complete family unit, Owen and I would have to make space for Devon again, however limited that space might be initially. As the court adjourned, Devon approached me hesitantly, his attorney hovering nearby. Naomi, he said softly, thank you for not fighting this more than you did. I know you could have made it much harder. I stared at him, searching his face for the deception I half expected to find. I'm not doing it for you, I replied, keeping my voice low. I'm doing what might be best for Owen in the long run. But Devon, I swear, if you disappoint him, if you walk away again when it gets tough or inconvenient. The threat remained unfinished, but he nodded, understanding etched on his features. I won't, he promised. I'm not the same person who left. I know words don't mean much after what I did, but I'll prove it with time. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small envelope. Could you give this to him? It's just a card. I didn't know if bringing a gift would be too much. I took the envelope reluctantly. I'll think about it. As I walked away, Melissa fell into step beside me. You did well in there, she said. It's a reasonable outcome, all things considered. Is it? I asked, doubt clouding my thoughts. What if he gets bored of playing daddy again? What if Owen gets attached and then Devon disappears? She squeezed my arm gently. That's why we start slow, with supervision. If he's not serious, it will become apparent before Owen is too invested. Outside, the autumn air was crisp, leaves spiraling down from the trees lining the courthouse steps. I took a deep breath, trying to clear my head. When do we tell Owen? I asked quietly. That's up to you, Melissa replied. But it might be good to give him a little preparation before the first visit. Kids do better with some warning about big changes. Big changes. The words echoed in my mind as I drove home, the envelope from Devon sitting on the passenger seat like a ticking time bomb. How do you tell a 4-year-old that the father he's hardly mentioned in recent months is suddenly going to be part of his life? How do you explain abandonment and return in terms a child can understand? My mother's car was in the driveway when I arrived home. Inside, the comforting smell of her signature chicken soup filled the house, her way of showing support without crowding me with questions immediately. Mommy. Owen crashed into my legs the moment I stepped through the door, his small arms wrapping tightly around my knees. I scooped him up, breathing in his little boy scent of sandbox and apple juice. Hello, my love, I murmured, holding him close. I missed you today. We builded a huge tower, he announced proudly. Like big as the sky. And then Rex knocked it down, he added with the characteristic resilience of childhood, referring to his stuffed dinosaur who often took the blame for such destructions. That sounds exciting, I replied, carrying him into the kitchen where my mother was stirring the soup. She looked up, questions in her eyes. I gave a slight nod. We would talk later, after Owen was asleep. Dinner was a welcome reprieve from the tension of the day. Owen chattered about preschool, about the squirrel he'd seen in the backyard, about his friend Zach who had lost a tooth and gotten a whole $1 from the tooth fairy. I savored these ordinary moments, wondering how our routine would shift once Devin entered the picture. After bath time and 2 bedtime stories, Owen finally drifted off to sleep, his dark lashes resting against his cheeks. I stood watching him for a long time, memorizing the gentle rise and fall of his chest, the way his fingers curled slightly around the ear of his stuffed rabbit. Downstairs, my mother had poured 2 glasses of wine and was waiting patiently at the kitchen table. "So," she said as I sat down heavily across from her, "what happened?" I took a long sip before answering. Devin gets supervised visitation. Starting with 2 hours a week, then gradually increasing if things go well. She nodded slowly, absorbing the information. "And how do you feel about that?" The question unleashed a flood of emotions I'd been holding back all day. "I don't know, Mom. Part of me is furious that he gets to waltz back in after 3 years like some prodigal father. Another part wonders if I'm wrong to stand in the way, if Owen really does need his dad in his life." She reached across the table and took my hand. "Both things can be true, sweetheart. You can be angry at Devin, you should be angry at Devin, and still recognize that a relationship with his father might benefit Owen in the long run." I sighed, tears threatening. "But what if he hurts Owen? What if he decides fatherhood is too hard again and just leaves?" "That's a valid fear," she acknowledged. "But it's also why the court is starting with supervised visits. If Devin's commitment wavers, it will become apparent in a controlled environment where Owen has support." Her words echoed Melissa's. Logical, reasonable. But they did little to calm the storm of anxiety brewing inside me. "Oh," I said suddenly, remembering the envelope still in my purse. "Devin gave me a card for Owen. I don't know if I should give it to him or not." I retrieved it, turning the simple white envelope over in my hands. No writing on the outside, sealed carefully. "That's your call," my mother said gently. "But maybe see what it says first before deciding?" I nodded, sliding my finger under the flap. Inside was a card with a cartoon dinosaur on the front, Owen's current obsession. The message inside was simple, written in Devin's neat handwriting. "Hi Owen, my name is Devin. I'm your dad. I've been away for a long time, but I'm hoping to meet you soon. I've heard you like dinosaurs. I like them too. Maybe we can talk about them together someday. Your dad." No grand promises. No elaborate excuses. Just a simple introduction and a tentative connection point. Despite myself, I felt a twinge of something like respect for the restraint it showed. "It's actually not bad," I admitted, passing the card to my mother. I was afraid it would be full of empty promises or excessive gifts. She read it quickly, then nodded. "This is appropriate. It acknowledges his absence without making excuses, and it gives Owen a safe conversation starter." I took the card back, studying it again. "So I should give it to him?" "I think so," she said. "It might make the introduction a little less jarring if he has some idea of who he's meeting." That night, after my mother had gone home, I sat alone in the dim light of the living room, the card in my hands. The court date had gone exactly as Melissa had prepared me for, yet I felt blindsided. The practical reality of Devin returning to our lives, even in this limited capacity, was overwhelming. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to a photo taken the day Owen was born. Devin holding our swaddled newborn, his face awestruck and tender. What had happened to that man? The one who had wept when he first held his son, who had whispered promises of protection and love. Another memory surfaced, Devon pacing the nursery at 3 a.m., dark circles under his eyes, trying unsuccessfully to soothe a colicky Owen while I took a desperately needed shower. His jaw had been tight with frustration, his movements increasingly jerky as Owen's cries escalated. Had the signs been there all along? The growing resentment, the mounting sense of being trapped? Should I have seen it coming? I forced myself to put the phone away. Rehashing the past wouldn't change anything. What mattered now was navigating the future, ensuring Owen's emotional well-being while protecting him from potential disappointment. The next morning, over breakfast, I decided it was time to broach the subject. "Owen," I said carefully, "I have something important to talk to you about." He looked up from his dinosaur-shaped pancakes, syrup coating his chin. "Is it about school?" he asked, his forehead crinkling with concern. He'd recently gotten in trouble for roaring too loudly during quiet time. "No, sweetheart, it's not about school," I assured him, smiling despite my nerves. "It's about your dad. Do you remember when we've talked about your daddy before?" Owen nodded solemnly. "He had to go away," he said, repeating the simplified explanation I'd given him when he'd first started asking questions. "That's right," I said, choosing my words carefully. "But sometimes people who go away decide they want to come back. Your daddy wants to meet you. He wants to spend some time getting to know you." Owen's eyes widened. "Like Zach's daddy? He went away but now he comes on Sundays and they go to the park." The innocent comparison to his friend's divorced parents caught me off guard. "Sort of like that," I agreed. "But your daddy hasn't met you since you were very small, so first you'll need to get to know each other. He sent you a card. Would you like to see it?" Owen nodded eagerly, his curiosity piqued. I handed him the card, watching as he opened it carefully. "He likes dinosaurs too," he asked after I'd read it to him, his voice tinged with wonder. "I guess he does," I said, forcing a smile. "Can I meet him today?" The question, so earnest and hopeful, made my heart ache. "Not today, honey. But soon. We need to make some special arrangements first. But I promise, you'll meet him soon." Owen seemed satisfied with this answer, returning his attention to his pancakes with the easy adaptability of childhood. For him, the idea of meeting his father was simply a new adventure on the horizon. He couldn't comprehend the complex emotions roiling beneath the surface, the years of absence, the broken trust, the tentative hope for redemption. Over the next week, we worked with the court to set up the first supervised visit. It would take place at the Family Connection Center, a facility designed specifically for such situations, with toys, games, and trained supervisors to ease the interaction. Devon would arrive first, then Owen and I would join them. I would stay for the introduction, then retreat to the waiting area while the supervisor monitored their time together. The night before the first visit, I barely slept. Every scenario played through my mind: Owen crying in fear, Owen rejecting Devon entirely, Owen becoming instantly attached to this virtual stranger. By morning, my nerves were frayed raw. Owen, however, bounded out of bed with excitement. "Today I meet my daddy," he announced as I helped him dress in his favorite dinosaur t-shirt. We'd been talking about the visit throughout the week, reading books about different family structures, answering his innocent questions as honestly as age-appropriate explanations would allow. "That's right," I said, smoothing his unruly curls. "Remember what we talked about? You're going to meet him at the special play center, and I'll be right there at first. Then I'll go to the waiting room while you and your daddy play for a little while. And there's gonna be another grown-up there too," Owen recited, remembering our conversations. To help us if we need anything. Exactly right, I praised, amazed at how easily he absorbed information when presented simply and directly. The drive to the Family Connection Center was tense, at least for me. Owen chattered happily from his car seat, speculating about what toys might be available and whether his daddy might know any good dinosaur facts. As we walked from the parking lot to the building, Owen's small hand in mine, I spotted Devin waiting nervously by the entrance. He was holding a small gift bag and shifting his weight from foot to foot. When he saw us, his face lit up with a mixture of anxiety and hope. Remember, I whispered to Owen, if you feel scared or uncomfortable at any time, you can ask the helper grown-up to come get me. Owen nodded solemnly, then his attention fixed on Devin. He pressed against my leg slightly, suddenly shy now that the moment had arrived. Hello, Owen, Devin said as we approached, crouching down to be at eye level. I'm your dad. It's really good to meet you. Owen studied him silently for a moment. You look like me, he finally announced, touching his own dark curls. A smile broke across Devin's face. I was just thinking the same thing. Inside, Ms. Patel, the supervisor, introduced herself warmly and explained the process again. The playroom was colorful and inviting, with different activity stations set up around the perimeter. I brought something for you, Devin said to Owen, offering the small gift bag. Your mom said it would be okay. I nodded confirmation when Owen looked to me for permission. He opened the bag and pulled out a plush triceratops. Wow, he exclaimed, his earlier shyness forgotten. This one's my favorite. How did you know? Your mom told me, Devin said honestly. I have a lot to learn about you. For the next 15 minutes, I stayed in the room as Owen cautiously showed Devin his new dinosaur's features and asked him if he knew that Triceratops had 3 horns to protect themselves from predators. Devin responded with appropriate enthusiasm, either too effusive nor too reserved. When Ms. Patel gently suggested it was time for me to step out, Owen seemed comfortable enough. I kissed the top of his head, reminded him I'd be just outside, and made my way to the waiting area, my heart pounding. The 2 hours crawled by. I tried to distract myself with a magazine, with emails on my phone, with anything to keep my thoughts from spiraling into worst-case scenarios. But my mind kept returning to the same question, was I doing the right thing? When the visit ended, Owen bounded into the waiting room, clutching his new dinosaur and talking excitedly about the block tower he and Devin had built. It was this big, Mommy, he exclaimed, stretching his arms wide. And Daddy knows all about Triceratops. He said they lived in families, just like people do. The word Daddy from Owen's lips hit me like a physical blow. Already, the connection was forming. Devin followed behind, his expression a mixture of elation and caution. He did great, he told me softly. He's amazing, Naomi. So smart, so curious. I nodded, unable to form a response around the lump in my throat. Can Daddy come to our house next time? Owen asked innocently. I want to show him my dinosaur collection. Ms. Patel, who had joined us, smoothly interjected. We'll be having a few more playtimes here first, Owen. Then we'll talk about next steps. Outside, as we were about to part ways, Devin hesitated. Thank you, Naomi, he said quietly. For giving me this chance. I know I don't deserve it. I met his gaze directly. You're right. You don't. But Owen might deserve the chance to know his father, if you're really committed this time. I am, he said firmly. I know it will take time to prove that, but I'm not going anywhere. As Owen and I drove home, my emotions were a tangled mess of relief, anxiety, and a strange sense of loss. The visit had gone well, better than I had feared. Owen had been comfortable, Devon appropriate and engaged. But the ease with which Owen had accepted this stranger as daddy left me unsettled. "Did you have a good time?" I asked, meeting Owen's eyes in the rearview mirror. "Yeah," he replied enthusiastically. "Daddy said next time we might play with the dinosaur puzzle they have. And he knows about T-Rex too." I swallowed hard. "That sounds nice, honey." "Mommy?" Owen's voice turned serious. "Why didn't Daddy live with us before?" The question I'd been dreading. I took a deep breath, trying to frame an answer that was honest but not damaging. "Sometimes, honey, grown-ups make mistakes. Your daddy wasn't ready to be a parent when you were born. He needed time to grow up and learn how to be a good dad. Like when I needed to practice using a fork?" Despite the gravitas of the moment, I couldn't help but smile at the comparison. "Something like that," I agreed. "Learning to be a parent is a big job. Some people need more time to learn than others." Owen seemed to consider this. "Is he done learning now? Is that why he can play with me?" "He's working on it," I said carefully. "That's why you're meeting at the special play center first, with the helper grown-up. To make sure he's learning what he needs to know." Owen nodded, satisfied with this explanation. His world was still simple, defined by clear categories of right and wrong, learning and knowing. The nuances of adult relationships, the complexity of forgiveness, the tentative nature of second chances, were beyond his understanding. The weekly visits continued through October and into November. Each time, Owen returned bubbling with stories about the games they'd played, the books they'd read together, the dinosaur facts Devon had shared. Gradually, I felt my rigid opposition softening, not into forgiveness exactly, but into a cautious acknowledgement that these visits seemed to be bringing Owen joy without apparent harm. In early December, we had our 3-month review with Judge Sloan. This time, the atmosphere in the courtroom was less adversarial. Ms. Patel's glowing reports of the supervised visits had set a positive tone. "In my professional opinion," she testified, "Mr. Harrington has shown consistent commitment to rebuilding a relationship with his son. He arrives early to every visit, comes prepared with age-appropriate activities, and demonstrates genuine interest in Owen's thoughts and feelings. Owen, for his part, has formed a positive attachment and looks forward to their time together." Judge Sloan nodded, reviewing the written reports. "Mrs. Westbrook, has your perspective changed since our initial hearing?" I considered the question carefully. "I've seen Devon maintain consistency these past 3 months," I acknowledged. "Owen certainly enjoys their visits." "I'm cautiously optimistic." Devon's face showed evident relief at my words. "In light of the positive reports and Mrs. Westbrook's assessment, I believe we can move to the next phase as originally outlined," Judge Sloan declared. "Mr. Harrington will be granted extended supervised visits, including the possibility of meetings at his home with supervision." She looked at me. "Mrs. Westbrook, are you amenable to beginning occasional visits in Mr. Harrington's home, provided the court-approved supervisor is present?" This would allow Owen to become familiar with his father's living environment in a controlled setting. The question caught me off guard. I'd known this progression was possible, but the reality of Owen entering Devon's home, his life apart from us, was unsettling. Still, if we were going to continue this path, it seemed like a logical next step. "Yes, Your Honor," I replied. "As long as the supervision continues." "Excellent," she said, making a note. "We'll reassess again in 3 months. If the extended visits go well, we can discuss the possibility of moving to unsupervised day visits." Outside the courtroom, Devin approached me cautiously. I was thinking, he began, with Christmas coming up, would it be possible for me to give Owen a gift? Something special for our first holiday reconnecting? The request was reasonable, yet it stirred complicated feelings. Christmas had been our holiday, Owen's and mine, for the past 3 years. Our traditions, our memories, untouched by Devin's absence. What did you have in mind? I asked, neither agreeing nor refusing yet. He's been talking about this interactive dinosaur exhibit at the Children's Museum, Devin said. I thought maybe tickets for the 3 of us. If you're comfortable with that. The supervisor could come too, of course. The suggestion, including me rather than attempting to create a separate Christmas experience, surprised me. Let me think about it, I said. It's not a bad idea, but I need to consider how it fits with our existing holiday plans. He nodded, accepting the non-committal answer without pushing. Of course. Just let me know. As he turned to leave, I found myself calling after him. Devin. He paused, looking back with a question in his eyes. Thank you, I said, the words feeling foreign on my tongue. For doing this right. For being consistent with the visits. It means a lot to Owen. The words hung between us, an unexpected bridge across years of bitterness and pain. I watched Devin's face register surprise, then cautious gratitude. He's what matters in all this, I added, reinforcing the boundary even as I acknowledged his effort. In the weeks that followed, I observed our son's growing attachment to Devin with a mixture of emotions too tangled to name. During their supervised visit at Devin's apartment, a modest but child-friendly space with Owen's artwork already displayed proudly on the refrigerator, I found myself noticing details that humanized the man I'd reduced to a villain in my mind. The way he'd remembered Owen's allergy to strawberries, the children's books carefully selected to match Owen's reading level, the patience with which he listened to elaborate dinosaur stories. We eventually agreed to the museum outing, Owen's Christmas gift, scheduled for the weekend before the holiday. Walking through the exhibit, watching Owen's eyes widen with wonder at the animatronic displays, I caught Devin watching me instead of the dinosaurs. What? I asked, self-conscious. He hesitated. I never thought we'd be here. The 3 of us. I know we're not, but still. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, I said, but without the sharp edge that would have accompanied those words months earlier. We have a long road ahead. Later that night, after tucking an exhausted Owen into bed with his new museum souvenirs, I sat alone on the porch swing, watching snow begin to fall in gentle spirals. The future stretched before us, unwritten and uncertain. I didn't know if Devin's transformation would endure, if Owen's happiness would continue, if my own heart would ever fully heal. But for the first time since finding that note on my kitchen counter 3 years ago, I allowed myself to consider a possibility I'd never imagined, that sometimes, broken things can be rebuilt into something different, not perfect, not unmarked by the fractures of the past, but perhaps, in their own way, whole.